looks like, so use your imagination a little.
It all started in the first grade, where I was one amongst a rabble of peanut butter and jelly sandwich eaters. I, Ralphie Parker, was a member of the alphabetical ghetto, along with Schwartz, Wachsnewski, and poor old Zinzemeister. Medical science has finally begun to realize that those of us whose names start with letters at the end of the alphabet grow up accepting the fact that everyone else comes first. Kids in the front of the classroom love nothing more than to display their knowledge by waving their hands frantically, even before questions were asked. They went on to become corporation presidents, TV talk show hosts, and owners of cabin cruisers. And there wasn't a Wachsnewski in the lot.
Long before the No Child Left Behind Act was passed, one child was left behind. And long before the Every Child Succeeds Act was passed, he found his own way to succeed in Lost at Sea by Gene Shepard.
We sat so far back in the classroom that Miss Shields was a shifting figure in the haze on the distant horizon. Since we could neither see nor hear, the key was to never be called on. My salvation was simple. I moved like a snake, bobbing and weaving. I learned early on in the game that if they don't catch your eye, they don't call on you. Every once in a while, the teacher would raise their voice above the usual bleat. This would often precipitate labored intellectual debates. Marsupial? Boy, Schwartz, I'd like to see one of them marsupials.
They lay eggs.
You mean like ducks? Do they quack too?
How should I know?
Thus, the subject of marsupials was closed forever. Our survival techniques made it possible for me and my band of fellow ignoramuses to slide by, year after year, undetected. The years passed, but my true identity as a faker was never really in danger of exposure. 8th grade, graduation day arrived. In September, I would be a full-fledged high school kid. Wow! Mail!
For me.
High school registration and classes for freshmen begin next Monday. Report at 8:30 a.m. Hey, Schwartz, did you get your card?
Yeah!
What's all this registration stuff?
I don't know. I guess that's where we go to pick the teachers and classes and stuff we want to take.
Yeah!
The dreams of youth.
Registration day dawned. I had lain in bed the night before making plans. I would grab the front seat in every class and listen to every word. No longer would I duck and dodge behind a screen of kids. If others could actually learn, so could I. Great staircases with rivers of kids streamed in all directions. Report to room 220. There was Schwartz.
Good old Schwartz.
And Wachsnewski. And even poor old Zinzemeister.
Freshman, this is your first day in high school.
I sat there, anxious to begin my glorious career of learning. A new era was about to begin.
We sit alphabetically in this class. A's up in front, to the right. Get going.
I trudged behind Schwartz towards the dim recesses in the back of the classroom. It was well over a quarter of a mile to the front of the room, but I sat bolt upright, my iron determination intact. No more faking it.
Class, my name is Mr. Pittinger. Every classroom of my life had been filled with girls on the honor roll who wrote in mysterious notebooks. I never knew what they were writing, so I figured I'd just write everything. A-L-G-E-B-R-A. That is the subject of this course.
What?
Algebra is the mathematics of abstract numbers. I will now illustrate. If y equals 5 and x equals 2, what does the following mean? X plus y.
How can you add X's and Y's?
The crowd in the front of the room are already waving their hands. Oh! This class wasn't 30 seconds old. And I was already 6 weeks behind. Instinctively, I began to weave. By the time Mr. Pittinger wrote the second equation on the board, I was bobbing and weaving like a cobra. I had run into something that was completely unlearnable. Algebra. And there was no way to fake it. Every morning at 8:35, I marched with leaden feet and quaking bowels into Mr. Pittinger's torture chamber. Ah!
By the end of the 6th week, I knew that after all those years of bobbing and weaving, I was gonna fail. Fail! No B, no
Gentlemen's C. Fail.
But at home, I studied.
Hey, son, what's all this X and Y stuff? It's algebra, abstract mathematics. The stuff you kids study these days. True, Pittinger hadn't yet realized my identity as a faker, but I knew that one day, inevitably, the icy hand of truth would rip off my shoddy facade and expose me for all the world to see! Mr. Pittinger graded on performance in class. I had no classroom performance, so my doom was sealed. But at home, I continued trying to actually learn something about algebra. You know, when I was your age, kids didn't know anything. Kids today sure are a lot smarter than when I was a kid. Wednesday, 2 days before the big test. It was with great relief that I noticed that only 2 minutes remained before the bell. But it was then that I made my fatal mistake. Ralph! Ralph!
He was calling on me!
Come to the board, please. Give us the value of C in this equation.
I stared at the first equation I had ever seen up close. It was well over a quarter of a mile, lacerated by mysterious crooked lines with fractions and parentheses and miniature 2's and 3's, hovering above the whole thing like tiny barnacles. And at the very end of this unholy mess was a tiny equal sign. And on the other side of the equal sign was a 0. All of this adds up to nothing.
The value of C, please.
The equation blurred before my eyes. What did the C look like anyway? I'd forgotten the alphabet!
C, please.
I spotted a single letter C buried deep in the writhing mess of Y's and X's. One tiny C!
C, please.
As I stood and stonily gazed at the enigmatic Egyptian hieroglyphics of that fateful equation, from somewhere beyond the blue horizon, it came to me. I heard my voice say clearly, firmly, with decision, C is equal to 3.
How did you know?
Well,
Listen, it would be pointless for you to waste time on our little test. Would you help me grade papers instead?
gosh, if you really need me, I'd be glad to help.
Thanks. I need someone who really knows his stuff, and most of these kids are faking it.